When it comes to the topic of the First Amendment, there are so many things that can be said. Some would argue that regulations and limitations on speech are needed because without official regulations, it would compromise the protection of the American democracy. Others would argue that there should be no limitations because the limitations placed restrict free thought and expression in general. In today's society, being involved or associated with any type of hate speech provokes the community to do more than law enforcers. In order for society to keep a stable social structure, a few limitations may be very valuable in some instances, but ultimately too many official regulations would dull the right of the First Amendment, and it would become too hard to classify what is actually justified and protected by the amendment. In the article, Hate Speech and Political Correctness, it questions if the community would could be effectively combat hate speech better than official regulations. For example, in the article, he states that except for a long-term reporting and policing function, the only broad community involvement in hate speech ordinances come in the initial period when the ordinance is debated. So even if the community is involved in this debate when it's happening, when it's over, the community ultimately has no say in what happens after. Nelson also states that media and social pressure can't combat hate speech better than official regulations because media can play a role in educating the public, and social pressure can play a role in changing people's attitudes. But media and social pressure can't change people's actions. With the community and social pressure, it may not change some people's attitudes and actions, but hate speech is not protected by the amendment. So the community has been combating this type of speech for years without a vast amount of help from the law. According to another source from the Free Speech Center, stated that most people believe other groups have an easier time exercising their free speech rights without a consequence than they do. For example, Democrats see conservatives as having an easier time, while Republicans believe minority groups such as Black, Hispanic, Asian, and LGBTQ people have an easier time than whites, conservatives, and people like them. This this survey was made post 2020. COVID has changed so many things, including what things are now not acceptable to say. Even with all this change, hate speech is still not one of the protections included under the First Amendment. There are many people that agree that hate speech is not acceptable in today's society, but don't think that it should be prevented by the government. In a statistics article, it stated after a survey, 59% of Americans think people should be allowed to express unpopular opinions in the public, even those deeply offensive to other people. 40% think that the government should prevent hate speech in public. Nonetheless, an overwhelming majority of 79% agree that it is morally unacceptable to engage in hate speech, racial, or religious groups. Thus, the public appears to distinguish between allowing offensive speech and endorsing it. With another article from the Free Speech Skepticism, stated that it should not come as a surprise that free speech theory is vexed by the mind-body problem, since speech seems to exist in a twilight realm between the mental and physical, between the thought and behavior. We can think in words and other symbols, and we can perform actions with them, and we can do both things simultaneously when expressing our thoughts in speech. Some people's words are associates with their behavior. Not everyone will be happy. Someone will always get offended with what you say, even if it is a true statement. Limitations on speech sometimes causes hindrance in learning education. For example, inside classroom historic events are even taken out of the curriculum because it's part of the limitation on the amendment. But hate speech is generally not protected by the amendment. In the article, Teacher Speech Inside and Outside Classrooms in the United States, Understanding the First Amendment, it talks about how anything can be taken offensively to someone's cultures and morals. They stated in an example of the restrictions of a teacher by saying, in a Louisiana case, officials fired a full-time substitute teacher after he used the N-word in an exchange with a student. who maintain that this word is racist when spoken by someone of a different race. The teacher claimed that his dismissal violated his First Amendment right to free speech. In an unpublished order, a federal trial court dismissed the teacher's claim, reasoning that he could be disciplined for this expression because it conflicted with someone's policy and created substantial disruption in his classroom. In all reality, people are going to do whatever they want. Speech is something that evolves, and there is always a word that can replace it. It doesn't matter what the word is, the meaning is always still there. In the paradoxes of political correctness, it proposes the idea of hate speech being a part of a euphemism treadmill. Anna Skalkow describes the meaning of a euphemism treadmill as a neutral term that slowly acquires negative connotations and becomes offensive. It is replaced with a politically correct term, which slowly assimilates the meaning of a previous term. So, with that being said, it does not matter what the rule is in place. People will always react the same. So, what's the point of having multiple limitations on freedom of speech when limitations are set? Are for the limitations that are set are not focused on the main problems that are affecting people today.